So hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Mortgages podcast brought to you by Green Mortgage and Protection. And this week we have got a local property expert in Helen Nicholson who's joining us today. So hello Helen.
Hello James, thank you for inviting me.
I believe this is your first podcast as well.
It is, first podcast ever, yes.
All very exciting.
Very.
So yeah, obviously we've known each other for quite a while now. It's quite funny how things happen because I'd seen your boards around Hull.
Yep.
You've got your face on your
face
boards.
On them, yes, for my sins.
Helps you stand out. So we were trying to locate you. We couldn't find a referral into you. In LinkedIn, you're not on LinkedIn. You do socials, but you are purely referrals, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody comes to me from referrals, so which is great for me, obviously.
Yeah. So I was trying to find who is this woman? How do we get in touch with her? And then mutual client brought us together, and then we've worked together on a couple of things so far, haven't we? So
yeah, we have, which is good. Been great.
So yeah, I'm calling you the property expert. So tell us a little bit about kind of your journey into estate agency and what you're doing now.
So I worked for the Halifax Bank for years and years and years. That's where I started, and then got into Halifax Estate Agency. So I was in there for many years, and then ultimately got poached to come over to a local agent, which I did. And then I went to work for Purple Bricks, which I absolutely loved it. I've got to be honest, it was great at that point. Things changed,
yep.
And then a couple of people rang me to say come over to EXP. So that's where I am, and honestly, it's been the best thing that I've ever done. It's absolutely fantastic. Once you get over the nerves of going alone, yeah, I've been very, very lucky, very lucky.
I mean, business is obviously flying because where I live, I see your face everywhere now.
Yes.
Every street there's your board somewhere. So
yep.
Most of them with a sold sign on them as well.
Yes, so, that's good.
So yeah, our paths actually crossed without us realising. When you were at Purple Bricks, we were looking at a buy-to-let property. It sold before I got a chance to see it because it was in COVID where things were hanging around in minutes, not days or weeks. So when I actually called you, I was like, I've actually got this number. So yeah, we actually crossed paths years ago. But so yeah, obviously business is flying for you.
It is.
Are you seeing that as a whole for the market in 2025 at the minute?
I am personally, yeah. I think the market's been very busy. But I know that some agents aren't saying that. For me, whenever I speak to anybody, I always try and give them a bigger picture. For me, since the 1st of January, I've sold 18 houses already.
Wow.
So it's about making sure that people feel confident, I think, in the market.
Yeah.
Interest rates have now sort of steadied out. They're not obviously as low as they were, but they're probably never going to be.
Yeah.
But we've got to a point, I think, where people are now sitting down and going, look, we want to move. We've thought about moving. The rates are sort of coming down to a level that we're happy to pay. So it's just injecting that confidence, really. Do
you find that's a big driver in whether people make that decision to put the house on the market is purely interest rates, or do you see other factors that come into play that gives them that little push to do it?
Yeah, I think that interest rates when they were up at the 7%, yeah, that definitely stopped people looking.
Yeah.
But definitely now, I think people want to move. They're in a house that's too small and they're having another baby. Yeah. They're in a house. I always say that from Christmas, people suddenly rattle around in the house and think this house is too big for us. Yeah. Or they've got everybody there at Christmas and they're thinking, Jesus Christ, there's no way that we can manage in this house another year. We're growing, we've got grandkids, we've got more kids, we've got whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they're now at a point, genuinely for me, where people just think, right, we've had enough, we want to move.
Yeah.
The chances of the interest rates going back down to what they were is probably very slim. So we're sort of just levelling out, and people have got to move if they're moving for jobs. People have got to move if somebody passes away. It could be, and you will have seen this, people have had the really low interest rates. They stretched themselves to buy big houses on these rates. They've finished and now they're struggling.
Yeah.
So they've got to move. So the market's never stopped, but definitely at the minute, I'm seeing a fantastic market. I can't complain at all.
Yeah.
Really, really strong. Really good.
We tend to find it's those upsizers that are the most motivated because first-time buyers, they've sat on the sidelines for years. They've seen the rates in COVID and they're like, I want to go back to that. Well, it took 300 years to get to that point, so you're going to be waiting an awful long time. So we tend to find it's the first-time buyers that need a little bit more encouragement, and to say, look, this is what it is now. Things have improved. They're not what they were, but they're never going to go back to that, so you kind of have to live with it. But yeah, we find those that already own houses, they've had 1-2 children, or they get a promotion at work and it means moving, they are the most motivated to move. So we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. I'm guessing you're seeing the same.
Similar, and like when people get promoted, they get more income. So they want to then have a bigger house, or they want the extension. And what I was seeing a lot of was that people weren't moving. They were getting valuations a couple of years ago. They weren't moving because, a couple of years ago, they weren't moving. What they were saying is, right, we're going to do the extension, we're going to do the loft conversion.
Yeah.
But then obviously in COVID, where the cost of wood and all the materials, building costs went up, it was cheaper to move.
Yeah.
When we're getting less and less people now, we're thinking they're going to do extensions. More and more people are thinking they want to make the move, and that's definitely what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But I've been lucky. I don't advertise at all. Mine's all come from referral of people.
Yeah.
So really, when I get them, they are looking at moving. They're not looking at shall we move. That somebody said to them, "Oh, you want to?"
They're already committed.
They're already committed by that point. Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say.
So obviously we're chatting like off air about how you've got like a different approach to what we see like other agents have. So give us like a quick overview of kind of if somebody came and listed the house with you, what you would do like for them to get them moving basically.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing for me is that the difference I have over another agent is that if they have office or offices, and they have staff working in those offices, which is great, but ultimately none of those staff have been in any of the properties.
Yep.
So the valuer does the valuer's job, which is great, gets the house on the market, but then if you have a buyer ring up and go, well, can you tell me about this property? Any member of staff is just going to get the brochure out at the same time as the person who's ringing up.
Yep.
And they can't talk with any authority. I know if the dog leads under the stairs, for example. I know, if the oven's clean.
Yep.
So it's all of those things for me because there's not a single person who can speak to me that I haven't been in every single house and know everything about it.
Yeah.
And I think that instills a lot of confidence. And I think as well, from me, what people want to know is that when you go into their property, you make them feel good about their house.
Yep.
And so because I feel good about their property, I can give that off when I'm actually talking to people and say it's a lovely, beautiful property.
Yep.
It's got this, it's got that. You need to have a look at this lovely wardrobe or this bathroom or whatever it might be.
Yep.
I can then inject that enthusiasm to anybody who wants to look at it.
Yeah, you do tend to have this like amazing memory. Like whenever we talk about properties, like you instantly like boom, and then you can reel something off, like how long it was on the market for, the full address, the name of the owners, what specific like features it had, and stuff like that. So that's got to be a bit of a gift, surely.
Oh well, it's funny. I had a lady ring me the other day, and I was in the car, and she was from another agent, and she wanted some chain details, and I said, "Oh well, I can give you them now," and she was like, "Oh, aren't you driving?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I am driving," but and I think that becomes because it's only me. Yeah. And that's what I sell me on. I am going to speak to everybody who wants to look at your house.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be there with you every step of the way. And if somebody rings me up, it's not a case of, oh, hello, it's Helen. They ring up and I go, oh, hiya, James. I was just going to ring you, or I've just been talking to so-and-so about you. Yeah. I've got this property and blah, blah, blah. And I think that makes the difference. I think I try and always be kind to people, but also, make them feel like they're really important because they are.
Yeah.
All my customers are important to me, and that's why I get other people coming back to me.
And it's it is the biggest financial commitment you're ever going to make.
Absolutely.
As well. So. Yeah. Again, we're chatting off air as well. It's like when you've got that team around you that's helping you with the purchase, whether it be an agent, a mortgage advisor, solicitor, or something. Is you want someone that's going to be proactive.
Yep.
So if you're on the phone and beating them to the punch with every update, it's like, oh yeah, she's on it. She knows what she's doing.
And that's important. I think you've got to make sure you give great customer service. I sell myself on customer service ultimately.
Yep.
I think the thing that annoys us all is if we ring somebody, not necessarily in a business property transaction. If you ring somebody and they don't ring you back, there's nothing more frustrating.
Yeah.
So another thing that I try and do with all of my customers is I don't call them between 9 and 5 if I can help it.
Right.
And the reason for that is because we're busy, we're at work, we're looking after the kids, we're picking the kids up from school.
Yeah.
And really, when we're at work, if somebody wants to book a viewing on a property, I want to tell them about this property and this property and this property.
Yeah.
But if I ring them and they're sat at the desk, I'm asking them, what's your situation? When do you want to go? They don't want to talk to me about and that property. So for me, I try and do all my calls after sort of 5:30. My phone's on from 7:30 in the morning till 9 at night, every day, 7 days a week. And I always try and speak to all my customers. And that way, I can then ring my vendors and say, look, this customer, I've had a good chat with them. They're not on the market yet. I'm going down to see them. And I think that builds confidence as well for customers, definitely.
And so we're looking at like how long things are staying on the market for now. Is when we speak to clients, I've got people that have been on the house, had their house on the market for a year, and had very little interest. And we have some people that put it up on a Friday and it's gone on a Monday.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing at the moment, like the average like sale time at the moment?
I think for me, I'm sort of in my head, if I have a house on the market for 3 months, I'm starting to panic. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
This market is very much, there's a lot of property about.
Yeah.
I think you've got to be a very keen person who wants to sell the house. And I think you need to be saying, right, if your estate agent is saying to you it needs to be on at this price, whilst you can try it at another price, and I have no issue with that. If somebody says to me, well, you've recommended this, Helen, but will you try it at that? I'll always say to them, yes, you can. But over the period, I like to think within 2 months they're sold. Definitely 3. And I'm picking up a lot of property that has been on with other agents that, again, I haven't poached them. They've rung me because obviously because of the sold boards. Because they've been on a long time. And there's something wrong. You've got to have a good marketing strategy. You've got to be honest with people, and I believe in being like that. So I would say for me, 8 weeks is where I'd like to be. 12 weeks, I'm starting to think we really need to do something here.
Yeah. So we've seen it for years. I think it's probably the oldest trick in the book with agents is people get three quotes. I'm going to speak to whoever, and more often than not, if you're the third one, it's like, oh, what so-and-so quoted it at? Oh, 220. Oh, we think we can get 230, 240 for it.
Yep.
And, yeah, realistically, do you want to sell the house or do you just want to get the listing?
Yep.
They're two different things usually with agents, aren't they? So I'm guessing honesty is always the best policy.
Yep.
I can list it for 5 million if you want. It don't mean it's going to sell for that.
That's right.
Nobody likes to be told they've got an ugly baby, do they? It's like, well, you've got to fix that.
My strength with that is that I never, ever, ever ask anybody who else they've had, and I never ask them what other price they've been quoted.
Yeah.
Because I believe in what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put a house on the market because somebody's told you can put it on at that.
Yeah.
I want to put a house on the market because I believe that's the price it'll sell at. And honesty is always the best policy. This is where I think it is. If you want to sell it quickly, we need to put it on at this.
Yep.
If you're quite happy to sell it in the next couple of months because you're not quite ready yet or whatever, try it at this.
Yep.
But we will keep talking.
Yep.
And let's have a conversation. And invariably, selling a house, with respect to all agents, is not a difficult process. If it's on at the right price, it will sell. If it's on at the wrong price, it won't. You know, when we see people when you look through Rightmove yourself, we have all sat there and done it, and we go, oh, yeah, that's nice, that's nice. Oh, they're never going to get that for that. They're never going to get that for that. Oh, that's nice, that's nice, that's nice. And we all want the most for ours and the least for the one we're buying.
Yeah.
But your estate agent ultimately has got to be the person who's honest for you. And I like to put the offers in for the people who are buying and selling. So
I can imagine you've got to give some like cold hard truth to some people as well. Especially like someone that's lived in a house for say 10 years. They've gutted the place. They've done everything themselves. The kids have grown up there. And one of the things that we get when we speak to people, I said, do you know what your house is worth? I don't know. I was like, well, if I really had to ask you, what do you think? Oh, well, so-and-so sold for 250 last year.
Yep.
They're on the corner with an extended garage. They got 270. So I reckon mine's about 260. It's like, oh, so you do know that.
So you do know.
But I can imagine when somebody says to you, we think it's worth this, and then you've got to be the voice of reason almost and say, I think it's nearer this amount.
Yep.
So how would you kind of like frame that to somebody? Because framing is what it is, isn't it? Because as soon as somebody hears a figure in their mind, they'll lock onto that then. It's like, well, I'm not settling for anything less than this figure. So how do you frame that to a would-be client?
For me, it's all about the prep before you go. So the conversation you have with people before you go to the house, and then doing all of the background work. So it probably takes me, I would say, the best part of 45 minutes before I go to any property.
Yep.
I then take the comparables printed out. I then send them the comparables in the valuation report.
Yep.
And I know within reason what I'm going to value it at before you go. And
Yep.
then it could be much nicer than you think or much worse. And you obviously have that conversation. But honesty is always the case. And I always say to people, do you want me to be honest?
Yep.
And they'll invariably they say yes. It's a bit like when they say to you, you know, is there anything I need to do? And I always say, do you want me to be honest or really honest? And I've had people get skips, I've had people get, you know, and they'll always thank you afterwards because there's no point in having it. Ultimately, nobody wants a for sale board.
Yeah.
Nobody's interested in a for sale board. They're interested in a sold.
Yeah.
I want to sell it because I want you to recommend me and think I did a great service. You want to sell it because you want to move on to a bigger house, smaller house, a place in abroad, whatever it is. So you've got to be honest. So I I like to know if people have got an idea of where they want to be, because when you're then going to say that figure, it's always easier if you know you're going to disappoint them or you're going to make them happy.
Yeah.
But I would never go on what I think somebody else has said. I lose very little property, and I think that's because I've been honest with people. Kind, but honest.
Fair
not
but
brutal.
fair.
Yeah, fair but fair, yeah.
It's like, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you want my professional opinion?
Exactly.
They're
and
not
I
the
do
same
say
thing.
that. I do say that. And I always say, you know what your property's worth. We all really know what our property's worth. We do. We like to think we don't.
Yeah.
And what we really want for a house is totally different to what we're really going to get some of the time. But, you know, that's how it works, isn't it? And that's why I'm very honest and say, well, I will, whilst one of the things I always do is I'll negotiate on yours, but I'm then more than happy to negotiate on the one you want to buy. So whilst you might have to be honest with people, it's about the gap at the minute. The market is about, it's not so much about what you're selling for and what you're buying for, it's the gap. Because if they're not getting probably what they were hoping, but then they get the next one at less, it don't matter. You know, and I've just done that. I've just sold one. It was on at 325 to 350. We sold it at 340. So we was delighted because he wanted 325. And then I've got him 10 grand off the one he wanted to buy. So it's the gap, not so being firm and fair is good.
And I think that's something that people get fixated on as well. Is like, I want to squeeze every penny out of my house. And it's like, but if you can find the house of your dreams for less, or if we can find you a mortgage that's way cheaper than what you thought, and it's like, oh, actually, I'm going to be £100 a month better off because I've got a better deal. Then it's taking a little bit here, putting a little bit there, and so we were talking about like COVID, when you could put a house on Rightmove, not really have to do anything, and it would sell in minutes. I mean, I loved COVID. Being a mortgage advisor at home, doing mortgages in my pajamas, interest rates were 1%. It was a great time to be a mortgage advisor. So we were talking about how the market's transitioned, where there might be a little bit more legwork, or you're getting into bidding wars back in COVID. Kind of the offers that are coming forward now that you're seeing, how has the market changed from COVID to now?
Well, what I would say is in COVID, like you said, you put a board up and everything went over asking. At that point, I was working for somebody else. I put 101 houses on and sold 96. It was just nuts. It was totally crazy. But if you had something on at 150, it would definitely go at 160. It was just nuts. But now what's happening is, and it's took about 8 months. I was saying to you off air, it's took, I think, about 8 months for people to think they can make offers. And we're now back in what I would call a real market, which means your house comes on the market. You then get offers on your house, and we're back to getting offers, and that's good, because if we get an offer, then we can negotiate on it. And sometimes people, you know, they go, oh well, if the offer comes in at that, then I'm not interested. You can just tell them no. And I say, well, what we've got to do first of all is we've got to get them in. Because if you get no viewings, you're definitely not getting any offers. And that goes a bit back to what you were saying about price. So it has to be on at the right price to get them in, and then my job's to get them the best price, and then to get them the best price on the one they want to buy. So we're back in that market, I believe, a normal market where a house isn't going to go on and sell tomorrow, usually. You know, it's going to take a bit of time, but provided it's priced right, and that's the key, we're going to see property selling.
So that kind of brings us on quite nicely to like the sales funnel. So anyone that's ever worked in business knows there's a funnel that the client goes through that journey. So if somebody's looking to list their house now, what would be your top advice to obviously spark the interest, but then also get a fair price, but get the price that you need as well?
I've just had that conversation with a lady yesterday. She's got a beautiful, beautiful home. But when you went in the garden and you looked at it, you could see that the windows, they were hardwood windows, and they needed repainting. There's nothing wrong with them, but that let the property down. And I think you've got to give yourself the best chance to get the best price. So if somebody wants to go on the market tomorrow, but then you go in and you go, right, I'm going to be honest with you here. If you put this house on the market, you are not going to get the best price because it needs X, Y, and Z doing. And I think for you to take a breath of a couple of weeks, a month, will stop a situation where people then think, oh, well, that needs new windows. It didn't need new windows. Oh, I'm going to knock 25 grand off the price of that. It was a big house. So it's about always making sure you're honest, and then you will get the best price. And if it means you need to say to people, look, you really need to get rid of your stuff, because a lot of people have stuff. We all have stuff. And people always say to me, don't open the wardrobes. And I go, no, that's fine. Don't open the garage.
Some of it might be a very unique taste as well.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to be honest about that, and you have to say, look, if you want me to be honest, you need to probably paint this room white.
rather than bright purple.
Yeah, and it's true, you know, because and I can give you an example of a property that we had on the market. It had a tenant in it, and it hadn't been maintained very well, to be fair. And we had it on at 120,000, and we were getting offers that were around about the 108, 110. The tenant then decided to leave because she knew the property was going to be sold. She redecorated the property, and we had two people fighting over it, 125. And all it was decoration.
Yeah.
So being honest is the most important thing, and giving yourself the best chance to make the first impression. I always say jet wash your drive, wash your windows, you know, paint your front door, because that's what people see in your photos, and that's what people are looking at.
I think some of those things aren't money cost. Yes, it's time, it's effort. Like
time.
If you've got a jet washer, it's an afternoon on a weekend clearing everything up. But yeah, I think I don't know if it's like today's society where you're used to getting everything instantly, Uber Eats, Netflix, Amazon, you name it. I think maybe some people have fallen into that trap of I can just list it and I'm okay. And it's like, no, you got to go back to that old-fashioned mentality. If you got to do a little bit of work to get what you need. Like I say, hide the things in the cupboard. If there's a slight maintenance issue, getting that fixed. And I think being open-minded as well is not having that closed mindset where you come round and go, you need to fix that. No, I don't. Nothing wrong with that. And it's like, well, I take my advice. Like, look, trust me, it will help. Yeah,
because you see that. You know, obviously, I'm going into somebody's their dream home. You know, at the end of the day, that they want to sell. And I'm very mindful of that. But it has got to be that. Well, actually, you might need to just shift that or put that in the car when people come to view. Or, you know, for example, dog crates. You know, somebody's house, no smell of dog, beautiful. I'm a dog lover myself. But some people don't like dogs. So if they saw a crate on a photograph, they might not view it. So it's just a case of being mindful, I think.
And so obviously it's quite good to have this conversation, because normally I work for the buyers because they're like looking to buy something, and then typically you work for the sellers. So it'd be good to have that conversation about. Obviously, it's a negotiation, so everybody's looking for a win-win. My buyers don't want to be like, oh yeah, walking away, just chip 20 grand off that, or is a seller like, oh no, well, I'm squeezing every penny out of this. Obviously, we're trying to find that middle ground, aren't we? Obviously, for the sale. So we would normally say to our buyers is, when you speak with the seller or the agent, is ask as many questions as possible. So one of the questions we would say is, you need to find out what the seller's situation is, and you also need to find out what they need to get from this transaction. So if we used to say to you or the vendor, what's the minimum you need to get from this transaction? Would you say that's a fair question to help with a bit of fact finding?
I think it's a fair question, but I think obviously I'm on the other side, so I obviously want the vendor to get as much as they can. But I also know what the vendor wants. So when I go to anybody's house, the first question I ask them is, and I always say this, if I put a big bag of money on your table, what would it need to be? What number would it need to be? So I already know that. And then obviously we get offers, and we can go, right, okay, let me discuss it with the client. I will then go to you as the seller and say, right, okay, this is the offer we've had. Okay, can we work with that? Where do we need to be? Because initially you told me you needed X. And because we want an outcome for the chain. Because again, somebody will go, no, I don't want to accept that. I've just done that on a particular property. I don't want to accept that. But then I said, right, well, let me see what I can get you first before we decide. Let's see what we can get you off the one you want to buy. And people are like, oh, right, okay. So I then would ring the estate agent and say, look, they've had this offer. It's not quite where we need it to be. But if we can get this property for that price, then it can work. And that's how I try and work. And that's why you need an estate agent to do the whole thing. Because we want a successful outcome for your seller and your buyer.
Yeah, because we say that to our buyers, to say, well, if you're trying to find out what the minimum is you can get away with, if you say, if the seller says, I need at least 200, because then that forms my deposit for this £400,000 house I'm looking at, you know, if you offer anything less than that, it's going to be flat out rejected.
Absolutely.
We also get clients that I would call ask holes. They ask for your advice and do the opposite. So if I'm saying don't offer less than 200,000, and they come back and I was like, oh, how did you get on? It's like, oh, we're rejected. It's like, what did you offer? 180. I was like, well, why ask for my advice then if you're going to do the opposite? So I think some people forget that it is a negotiation. There's a human being at the other end. You don't want to be pissing them off, basically, by disrespecting them with a low offer, and then they shut up shop, and then the deal's dead anyway, isn't it?
Because your estate agent ultimately should, even if somebody offers not what you're wanting, they should, like say, work for you to try and get that bit worked out. But if you're really annoying by offering a stupid offer, then you just shut the doors. And it's very hard for us then to get the vendor to go, oh, well, we'll talk about it again. Because by then they're thinking, oh, well, that's it. I don't want to sell to them anyway.
Yeah.
So we dance around each other, don't we?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, we get the successful outcome.
Yeah.
Generally, we do.
I think because there's an agent involved as well, I think sometimes feel like, there's that layer of protection between me and the vendor because they've got to put this stupid offer forward, not me.
Yeah.
And obviously by law you do have to put every offer forward
until exchange.
Yeah. So if it's still on the market, obviously someone can outbid you, but it is having that guidance from us, from you, from everybody else as well, is to get that win-win. So obviously price is one thing. People want to get the best price, whether it be for something buying or for selling. But there's also the actual circumstance of the buyer and seller as well. So how would you say a person's circumstance comes into account when you're working with a vendor and saying we've got these two offers? Where would you kind of put the circumstance in how you would pick one over the other?
Ultimately, it's not my property, and that's what I would say first and foremost. So for me, I would never ever say to a vendor, you need to choose this person. My job is to say, right, these are the circumstances. So it could be, for example, that somebody is putting in a higher deposit, so they're having a lower loan to valuation, and therefore it probably would go through without having a valuation. It might be a desktop, for example. On the other hand, it could be that two people are exactly the same. They're both first-time buyers. They both look good on paper, and then it's down to the vendor to decide. So I would guide them to an extent, but I think you have to be very mindful that I would never want to be the person who said pick that, because if it all went belly up,
it's on you
then they're going to come back to me. So I will give you guidance, and I've had that this morning on an offer that I've received. We've had two really good offers, but one is slightly different to the other in the circumstance, and I've obviously advised the vendors of that, and they will ultimately make the decision. So, but it's very difficult to pick one over the other when they're both the same. And then that comes down to what the vendor thinks. And that's why I really, unless it's death or divorce, I prefer vendors to do their own viewings personally. Because I think, you've bought this house, you've loved it, you've invested in it. And when you tell somebody who's coming to look at it, you give off that air of, oh, we've loved it, we've enjoyed it, we're only moving because of this. And that really then makes viewers think, oh, yeah, well, I really want it even more. So then it becomes easier when they decide, well, actually, they seem to love it more than they did. So that's how I tend to work with it.
I think it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, when the vendor does the viewings, because they can build that rapport with the buyer. So if you've got a young family that are viewing it, you tend to build a rapport with them because you think, well, my kids grew up here, it'd be nice to see your kids grow up here, and you build that bond that way. But then sometimes the vendor can let slip a bit too much information than what if you were showing them round. Obviously, by law, you can't share what offers have been made. But if the vendor's doing it, it's like, somebody offered 190 last week. I was really upset about it. It's like, okay, so 190, make a note of that. So sometimes they can let a little bit too much slip. But I think again, it's two human beings in a transaction where you do need that rapport. A pair of our clients, they're bid less than somebody else,
but they still got it.
They had a 2-year-old girl, and it's like, this is going to be our first home together. It's going to be our family home. I think they had a carp pond in the back garden. The little girl loved the fish. I mean, the dad, he was like a keen fisherman anyway, so he loved the fish and was like, we'll sell to you because we just loved your story.
We like your story.
And you love our fish, and to be honest, where we're going, we can't take the fish with us. So if you're happy to keep the fish, that saves us thousands having to move them. So they're like, the house is yours if you want it. And
it sometimes works. I often get quite a lot of the time mortgage advisors put offers in, and that's fine because obviously I know them, so they'll give us a ring and Ellen give us a heads up. Where do we need to be with that? Is it going to? And I can say quite comfortably, yes, it will be looked at, or no, you're well out there. And I think so. Sometimes that's a good way of doing it as well.
But it's that advice piece, isn't it? Like you're paid to advise the seller, so like you can give your advice. And it's like I'm working with the vendor. I know them quite well. I know anything below this, it's going to be a no because I know their circumstances. So I think it's asking all the right questions and gathering as much information as possible. Because what we try to do with our buyers is we try and coach them to. We'll go on to that in a second about being proceedable. So we say, like, when you put an offer in, they're going to ask for all these things. So make sure you've got them ready in a folder. You'll have some of them from me. These are the things that you want to say. So one of the things that you will look at from a buyer is if they're proceedable or not.
Absolutely.
So can you just give us a brief explanation of what you would class as proceedable and why it's important?
Okay, so for me, if somebody wanted to proceed with an offer and it was accepted by the vendor, so we did the negotiating and we got to a point where we thought, right, yes, subject to proof of funds, this person can proceed.
Yeah.
I'm quite strict with things like this, so I would see the mortgage in principle.
Yep.
If they said, which a lot of people do, oh, well, we're going to use the proceeds of sale, so they've sold the house.
Yep.
And for me personally, I would insist on seeing their existing mortgage statement.
Yep.
I need to know how much they've got outstanding.
Yep.
I speak to the agent who's got the chain details, so we will then know how much they've sold for, so we know what they've sold for, what their existing mortgage is.
Yep.
If they're having any funds, so if they're putting any additional savings in, they can cross out the sort code and their account number, but I need to see the savings account with their name on it and the date on it.
Yep.
If it's going to be gifted, obviously we get that as well, so we get the gifting letter.
Yep.
From parents or grandparents or whoever.
Yep.
And I always say, once you're happy with price, and I'm 100% happy with their chain details and that they can actually afford to buy it, then we put a sold on the board. So for me, there's never a sold for sale, because unless there's a particular reason.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, because people sit there then and go, oh, have you seen that's back on the market? So I avoid that wherever we can.
Yeah.
And so my buyers really have to provide everything before we even think about it being sold to them.
Yeah, because we say to
Belt
people,
and
like,
braces.
yeah, your when you put an offer in and it's accepted, your main priority is to get that house off the market, and this is how you do it.
Yep.
So they want to see you've got all the money lined up to buy the house. So
Yep.
between what you've got in savings or what mum and dad are gifting you and your mortgage in principle, does that make up the purchase price? 2 forms of ID to make sure you are who you say you are, and then solicitors' details as well, because they're gonna handle that part.
Yep.
So we say to people, obviously, don't ring any solicitors until you found a place, because they won't quote you until they know what you're buying, who your lender is and things like that. So that's usually the last piece that falls into place.
It is.
We tend not to get involved with that because, again, we'll get onto that a bit in a minute about house sales and things. But yeah, we let people make their own decision, a bit like people had their own decision to find you, to find us, that should be the same again. So yeah, in terms of sales then, the average still is, unfortunately, 1 in 3 does fall through for a range of different reasons. So what reasons are mainly the ones that you see at the minute?
I found that there's various reasons, but it can be, especially if people are separating. So if people are separating, obviously that can sometimes not always go smoothly, shall we say.
Yep.
So that can cause problems down the line. I think the biggest thing for me is length of time.
Yep.
So if somebody is anticipating that they're buying a property, I work with a fantastic solicitor who tries to get a sale through within 6 to 8 weeks, and that's their anticipated timescale. And we're now down the road of 18 and 20 weeks. People have unfortunately got the opportunity to see everything else that's coming on the market.
Yep.
And they can then unfortunately jump ship, or they just get fed up of waiting.
Yep.
But it's often because it's taking so long, and that's because you need to be proactive chasing your sales, which is obviously something I'm very keen on, making sure we're on top of everything to make sure we get to the successful outcome as quick as we can, because you give them too much opportunity to look at something else that they might think, oh, well, actually I like this, and this is taking so long.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about keeping in touch with your sellers, as well as keeping in touch with your vendors, and also the solicitors to find out what's happening. So, the solicitor that I love to work with this morning, he was emailing me at 5 a.m. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you need to do, but I know that if I ring Nick, he'll ring me back straight away, or he'll answer the phone, and I know where I am. And I did that this morning at 7 o'clock. I asked him for some leasehold information. He sent it, and I sent it to the potential buyer at 7 this morning. That to me is brilliant service.
Yep.
And that's what you need.
Yeah, we see it with people where they just get fed up.
They do.
Even like say with the separations and divorces, it's stressful enough as it is. Then you've got to sort out your biggest asset between you and
deceased. Same thing.
Yeah, going through probate. Obviously, mortgage. If you're buying with a mortgage, it's valid for 6 months. So if probate takes longer than 6 months, you're having to do everything from scratch. And it seems to get to that point where you just seem to be like nudging things along an inch at a time, and it's like almost like death by 1,000 paper cuts towards the end. So we see people where the circumstances change, whether it's like, there's a better house on the market that we like, or I've got a pay rise now so I can go afford something else.
Or they've been made redundant.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different reasons. Somebody can get ill and then pull out of the sale.
Yeah.
But it's just, It really is. Our job is to keep on top of everything, to chase your sale through to completion. And I find that long as you keep people informed, and I think that's one of the biggest things I would say, James, long as people know that the reason it's taking this amount of time is because of X, then they're okay. The same with if you're selling the house. They just need to know what's happening. Keep me informed and I'm happy. Don't keep me informed. And that's when I start to wander and look at Rightmove again and, this house has come on the market, let's go and have a look at it.
Even if it's just a phone call saying, look, I've not forgotten about you. Things are still moving, albeit slowly, but things are still moving. Or a text
message just to say, if you need me, you can ring me anytime, but this has happened, or I've chased this today, or, and that's why it works, I think, with me, is that I've got my fingers in every pie. So it's not, I'll ring up, but then it's gone through to another office and they've got to ring you and then nobody rings me back, because that's when people get frustrated. So if I'm just like dropping them a text, or I use voice notes a lot. So a voice note to say, hi, it's only me, I'm just ringing you because I've spoken to the solicitor, this is happening, they've chased this, and I'll give you a call back next week. That's all people want. They don't particularly want a full conversation, because they're at work, like we've said. They just need to know what's happening.
So we agreed before we started filming this, the best money you can spend is on a good solicitor.
Absolutely.
Is like anything, you get what you pay for. So there's usually a raised eyebrow over the cheapest. It's like, well, why are you the cheapest? I would spend the money on a good solicitor.
I would.
They've got your case in their hands for longer than anybody else. It might be, like I said, a 20-week legal process. You might have sold it in 2 weeks. We might have got a mortgage in 3. The rest of it is with the solicitor. Not bagging solicitors out there, by the way. But most of the process is with them.
It is.
So most of the headache, or most of the joy that comes out of buying a house can come from them. If it's a nice quick one, they're proactive, or it drags. It can be down to them. So invest in a good solicitor.
I would say I've got the best solicitor. He's absolutely amazing. He answers the phone when I need him to. My customers actually say to me, which is unheard of, they send me too much information. And I always say, don't ever say that. But they aren't the cheapest, but they are without doubt the best. If you want a sale to complete, he's just fantastic. And there's no bad reviews about him. I've used him for the last 18 months. Somebody recommended him to me, and he is the best. And like you say, it's not always about cost. It's about getting the best service if you want to move house.
See it as an investment.
See it as an investment. It isn't cheap to move house. So if you're going to do it, make sure it completes. It's so important. It's so important that you can ring a solicitor up, and it's not just going to go to answer machine. Nobody rings you back. You need to be able to speak to that person, because you don't know what you're doing. You know, they're not doing your job, you're not doing theirs, but you want to know what's happening. And I think it's invaluable. I really, really do.
And I think it is having that team. So looking at it holistically. So it's having a great agent in your corner that's going to help you list and work on the next one. Having a great broker that can save you thousands on your next mortgage deal.
Payments.
Getting a good solicitor that's going to get things over quickly. Because the other thing I was going to ask is, usually it's one or the other. You either sell quickly or you sell for the best price. Do you think they are mutually exclusive, or is there a way of getting both, do you think?
I think there is a way of getting both, I think if you set a realistic expectation for your vendor in the beginning, you should get the best price at a good speed. If they're expected something that's unrealistic and you're happy to put it on the market at that, then you're not going to get the best price, because ultimately it isn't going to sell. So I think you have really got to think, you've really got to set the scene. You've got to set the scene. So, you can get the best price, long as they think that the price you've given them is the best price.
And I think that's that bit where you're saying you spend an hour before you even see them.
Always. You
send over the comparables before you get there. Because me and you might argue about opinion, but we can't argue about
facts.
Data. I know you think it's worth this, but 4 on your street sold last year for this.
And what I do is I go into each one. So while I'm at the valuation, I'll go into each of those properties and go, and I always rate them before I go. So I'll go, right, I'll say, well, that's okay. So that's a 3 tick. That's great. It's a 4 tick. So I can then say, right, okay, this property, look, it's the same as yours. It's as beautifully presented as yours. This is what they got for it. But this one, is they got this for it. And, how would you rate yours amongst that? Because, that's the important thing, asking people what they really think is the best thing about their property. And then you can rate it against these properties that you're looking at. So I think that's important as well. So they know that when they are going on the market, they are going on the market at the right price, not at this ambitious price
Yeah.
that they're never going to get in a month of Sundays.
And I think as well, people get confused between listed price and actual sold price.
They do.
Because you might see on Rightmove, 3 doors down has gone up for 275, but it actually, when it finally went through at 250.
Yep.
But you've locked onto that 275.
That's right.
So when you're turning up with sold prices, this is what we're actually going to work with.
Yeah, wherever possible, I take sold prices. There are some that haven't gone on the land registry yet.
Yeah.
But we can also tell if something goes on the market and it completes really quickly, chances are they've got full price.
Yeah.
If something went on the market and it takes 360 days to sell, it probably hasn't sold at the full price.
Yeah.
So I think those things are important to point that out to people.
Yeah.
It's like we started off saying, people know really what the houses are worth.
Yeah.
And what they want it to be worth. But once you get given those facts, it's easy to then go, right, so where do you think your property should be on the market? Where do you think?
Yeah. So this one's got a loft extension, loft conversion. This one's got a kitchen extension. It's like we're not comparing apples with apples here, so we need to fall somewhere amongst this line somewhere.
Right. Yeah, but you've got to have done your research, I think, first. Yeah. I'm not very good at going into a situation. If somebody takes me to a house and then they go, can you just nip next door and have a look at this one that I rent out? I always say, no. Yeah. Because I don't want to give them false hope or also undervalue it. I'm selling my service, so it's got to be right. So do your prep beforehand. I always do. And ask the questions. I always ask the questions to the vendors before I go, so I know exactly what situation I'm going in, so I can take them exactly the right information.
So we're listing our house at the moment.
Yep.
We're trying to get as much interest as possible.
Yep.
So we're listing it at a reasonable, accurate price.
Yep.
We're doing a few touches to it to make sure it stands out on the initial photos, because obviously, like you said, first impressions count.
Yep.
We want to get people through the door. Yep. So that first picture you put on Rightmove or your marketing, that is the one that you want to put. Because sometimes you see if someone's got like an amazing knock-through kitchen, it's immaculate. That's sometimes the first picture that goes up.
Yep, absolutely.
So you want something that's got curb appeal. Fix those issues. Try and make the property as much as of a blank canvas as you can, without losing some of its character, so people can picture themselves living there.
Absolutely.
And I suppose building rapport with buyers as well, because I can imagine if a buyer speaking to a seller and say, oh, they're a really nice person, I'm not gonna have the shirt off the back and offer something stupid. Like I want to help them as well. So would you advise people to do their own viewings rather than get you to do it? Or?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, if it's not divorced or deceased, I have a lady who does my viewings for me. She's a fantastic lady called Helen. She's brilliant. I love her to death. She's fab. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, the enthusiasm you've got for that property, why you bought it originally, what was it you loved about it?
Yeah.
You can put that across. I know where the boiler is, and I know when it was serviced. I know where the loft hatch is, and I can tell, you know what I mean? But and I might know when the extension was done. But ultimately, I can't have that enthusiasm. I can't go, oh God, and we bought it, and we've had some great parties here, and we've loved it, and we're just only moving, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I think, for me, I love that people can enthuse about their own homes, because that's more likely to make a vendor think, yes.
Yeah.
And there are other circumstances. People are working, so therefore they want us to do them, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think nobody sells your property like you do, because you love it, and you're moving purely because of whatever your reason. But generally, unless it's a sad situation, I always think that you're going to enthuse about it because you've loved it, and you've enjoyed it, and that is so important.
I remember when we sold our last house like 2 years ago, I remember we did the viewings because I worked from home at the time, and when the people would leave, I was like, oh my God, I've shared far too much information here. I was just like, I opened my mouth and it all just came out, and I was like, they don't even need to know half of this stuff. But we had three offers, so it was almost like, although I was like dying inside, it was like job done, really.
I always say to people, I give them a bit of coaching. I always say to them, this is what you do. Shut up. Don't speak. And just speak what you need to. Yeah. Because what you start doing, that's the only downside, is you might go, oh, I know that bit of skirting down there, it needs painting and we're going to do it. Nobody sees the bit of skirting. Yeah. Nobody sees the bit of skirting. Yeah. They want to hear about how you feel living in this house. How have you? I've loved living in this house. We've loved it. We've had great parties. We have lovely barbecues. The sun comes in there at 6 o'clock at night, and when we sit there having a drink, we've absolutely loved the fact that we've put that media wall in, and then we've got these black, anything it might be. Share that. Yeah. Share the feeling. Share why you love the house. Yeah. Don't share that the skirting and the architrave need painting.
Yeah.
Because nobody cares about that.
They might not even notice it.
They don't notice it.
Because you're in it every day.
Absolutely.
And you probably painted it the first time, so you've got one eye on and do a very good job at that.
Share what's great about this house.
Yeah.
Why do you love this house?
Yeah.
What is it? And I think that's what sells a house. People just love of the property that they live in. So
I mean, some people do get hung up over little things like skating boards, don't they? But on your first visit, there's that much to take in. You probably miss that bit anyway.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's going to slap you in the face when you walk in, you probably need to fix that before somebody comes round.
And that's obviously, that would be my job beforehand. Before people come round, we need to do X. Before we have the photographs taken, you need to do Y.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it. When I go in houses, I spend my life. I had a lady the other day saying to me, "Oh, can I check the photographs before you leave?" And I said, "No." I said, "I'm going to take about 150. So no, you can't.
Yeah.
You just need to trust me. But I can promise you, I spend my life moving tea towels, shutting toilet seats, moving dishcloths, moving fairy liquid bottles." And I know a lot of people, when you look at photographs on Rightmove, that isn't always apparent.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm selling me as well. So I want to make sure that people look at your house and think, that's amazing, but also look at Helen's photos, they're great. So it's got to be a joint thing. Think how you would like the house to look.
Yeah.
And people often say to me when they get the photos back, they'll go, "Oh, I don't think I want to move now." And it's because all those little jobs that you were going to do,
you've now done.
You've done them, and now your house looks great.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because then obviously your buyers are going to look at it and go, "Oh my God, I love it."
Yeah. So would you put the most emphasis on the pictures for the marketing? So obviously that then draws people in, and then you get people through the door to have the conversation. So obviously pictures, walkthrough videos, things like that are key.
Yeah. I mean, for me, all of my vendors, if they're happy, I always do them a 1 minute video.
Yep.
I don't need it more than 1 minute because people get fed up, to be fair. So all of mine have a 1 minute video, which I then they go on TikTok, they go on Instagram, they go on Facebook.
Yep.
I'm on Rightmove, Zoopla and On the Market. They go on my website, and people love the videos. People love the TikTok videos, and they love it because they can share it, and they can put it onto Facebook, and then they can share it with their friends. I'm a bit too old to understand all that bit, but apparently that's what you all do. So you share everything, and then it grows. And the other day I had a house went on Instagram on Saturday morning, and by Sunday morning it had 3,000 views.
Wow.
Which is great, at the end of the day, and I've sold it today, which is good.
Yeah.
But that's the important thing. It's about getting as much out there as you can.
Yeah.
But because photographs are great,
Yeah.
but ultimately, we squeeze ourselves into a corner and we take a room picture like that.
Yeah.
But the reality is people want to know what the living room really looks like, what the kitchen really looks like. And walking through with a bit of trendy music in the background, that's what people want.
Yeah. I do love the ones where you get the pictures and where you've caught a glimpse of them in the bathroom mirror, or it's just the tripod and they're out the room and they've tried doing it like that.
I cut them bits out. I don't have any of them, but because you could. But I think that's important. Nowadays, people want everything now, like you alluded to earlier. So being able to see a video of a house straight away.
Yeah.
If people ring me to book a viewing, I'll say to them, "Have you seen the video?" And if they haven't, because I attach them to Rightmove as well, if I haven't, then I'll send them it. And another property that I've sold this morning, the girls must have watched the video about 100 times. Who wants it, bless her. Because people want to see it and show me friends, and I've sent it on, "Do you like it?" And but that's another dimension, isn't it? I've done this job 26 years, so we've evolved into this situation.
I think a video goes a long way, because I think you can't really hide anything on a video, whereas a picture, like a photograph, you can crop a little bit out, or if you can take it from a certain angle, you can put a filter on it, whereas a video, you can't really do that, so you can't really hide anything that way. And you probably see bits of the house that you wouldn't normally see. Like, it's very rare on Rightmove you see a picture of a hallway, because it's not really interesting, whereas if you're walking through, you catch a glimpse of that. So I think it goes a long way to building that trust, I think, because you're not hiding anything. You get to see everything. And there's almost, I think, that psychological effect as well, where you feel like you're already walking through the house. So I think it's a great idea, and obviously it's working for you as well.
It works really well. I've got to say, all my vendors like it. I love it.
Yeah.
And it is only 1 minute. Nobody's video is more than a minute, and because it's just a snapshot. But the good thing is you can pause it anytime.
Yeah.
So you can, even if you think, "Oh God, that's a big house to get in a minute," you can pause every second of it.
Yeah.
that's the beauty of how it works.
I find myself like scrolling them online. Like I have no intentions of ever moving again, and I stop and have a look at them. So, that's cool, isn't it? I like that.
You do. So that's how it works with me, really.
So I've got two final questions.
Okay.
So first one is, what is the best feature you've seen in a house that you've listed, whether it be swimming pool, media room, something like that? What's like the one thing that sticks out? Putting you on the spot, I know.
You are putting me on the spot. What is the best thing I've seen? Oh my goodness. I actually think that I've seen some amazing gardens. And I'm not a gardener at all.
Yeah.
But I've seen some absolutely amazing gardens. And one of the best things I ever saw, which I've now got in my house, is a beautiful terrace property in Beverley, and she had the most amazing chandelier over her
in the garden?
over a breakfast bar, which looked into the garden.
Oh, nice!
And it was stunning. And unfortunately for my husband, we now have an amazing chandelier. As much as he didn't want it, over my dining table, which looks out but it's in the kitchen, looking out into the garden, and I always laugh with Deb because I've sold for her 3 times, and she always has a chandelier over a breakfast bar. And
your husband must hate you coming home from
he
viewings.
Hates me.
When
He
like,
hates me.
What are we buying now? What are we changing now?
We're just doing the whole house again now. He hates it. He hates me, and he hates me going into clients' houses. So I think, gardens, amazing gardens, seen some beautiful gardens.
Yep.
But Deb's chandelier over a breakfast bar has got to be just one of the best things ever.
So this next one might be a little bit easier. What's the worst thing you've seen in a house that you've either listed or maybe turned down because it was that bad?
The worst thing I've seen was that somebody invited me to a property once, and they obviously invited me, and I didn't invite myself. And then when I went into the bedroom, the dirty underwear was on the floor. So that's not been good, especially when they invited me in.
Yeah.
Obviously, I didn't.
You knew I was
myself.
coming.
You knew I was coming. I didn't just knock on the door and say. I did get it listed, and they did move.
Just Photoshop that
but
out.
that's probably the worst thing that I've actually ever seen. But most people's houses are lovely. Most people are. I've never had a really bad vendor. I've got to say, I've been very fortunate. So that was a while ago. Not while I've had my own business. That's when I worked for somebody else.
Right. Yeah. You get to choose which ones you take on, don't you? So
that's it.
If there's some sort of dungeon in there or something, it's like, I'm probably not going to list that one.
Yeah. I did actually go to somebody that had a dungeon. Actually, forgot about that. Yeah, that was a few years ago. Yeah, I did.
Some things like that will just stick with you, won't they?
They did. Yeah, that was interesting.
I can imagine it was.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about listed houses, the market, and everything for best part of an hour now. So thank you very much for doing your first podcast and doing it with us.
Thank you.
So finally, for anybody that wants to list a house and use your services, as I mentioned, you're not on LinkedIn.
No.
Where is the best place to get in touch with you?
Okay. Well, you can get in touch with me on I'm on Facebook.
Yep.
I'm on Instagram as well, and also. You'll see my boards about, so people can give me a call.
Yep.
And if you search me on Google, I come up on there. So, Helen Nicholson at EXP, powered by EXP. Yeah.
Perfect.
Definitely, everybody can find me. It's not a problem. I'm everywhere. My face is everywhere, unfortunately.
Oh, that's it, yeah. I've seen you more and more now. I can't get away from you.
I know, I hate it. I say to people, I'm sorry, you're going to have to look at me while you're eating your breakfast.
It does the trick, though, doesn't it?
It does. I've got to say, it's
people
not what
feel
I
like
wanted
they know
to
you
do.
before they've even met you, so...
Yeah, it's great.
We will share all of that in the show notes.
Thank
we'll
you.
tag you in everything that goes out so
Brilliant.
you can use it for your stuff. So thank you ever so much for joining
Thanks, James.
us.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
So that is the end of another episode of the Let's Talk Mortgages podcast, brought to you by Green and Green. Next month, we have our very own Anna Braithwaite, who is our head of admin, who's going to be on with us to talk about the do's and don'ts for your next mortgage application, what lenders do and don't like, and some of the horrendous things and some of the good things that we've seen on mortgage applications. So, join us again next month for the very next episode.